How are you doing, Dr. Quevarra?
I am doing amazing today.
Just a little background. When I saw you speak at Greater Mount Zion, and the pastor basically was wanting to share with his church the seriousness of mental illness and how it's something that we as a nation need to discuss, but even more particular in the African American community, we need to discuss mental health. And so would you just like to share with everyone a little bit about what you do before we proceed?
Well, my journey in my life, first of all, thank you for having me. My journey in life has propelled me into this cycle of becoming a mental health advocate. It wasn't something I chose, it was something that chose me, so to speak. Me and my brother were caregivers for our mother over 14 years. Our mother was an ordained minister. She ran the prayer line for TBN. And all of a sudden, the mental health and stability of her mental state started to deteriorate. And the cycle of events that happen, the crisis after crisis, us not knowing what to do, us not understanding what to do, and us being taught and conditioned to not speak on it because, I thought the power of life and death was in my tongue. So
Mhm.
if someone were to ask me, how is your mother doing? I would say she's blessed and highly favored because I thought I could speak into existence the help and hope that I didn't have behind closed doors.
Mhm. So with that being said, do you believe in some cases that God can supernaturally heal what is termed mental illness?
I believe God does heal, but I believe that the way he heals isn't the way that I had anticipated before. So before I was praying and praying and praying, but it was in that moment I needed to seek resources and support that work parallel with the prayer. Faith without works is dead. And I kept getting dead outcomes because I wasn't tapping into the resources and support to get that help for my mother because my spiritual belief and what I believe didn't align with what people were telling me I should do. And so I didn't know how to marry those two worlds and get her the support and get the support for myself. Just in understanding mental health and mental illness, because, in our community, mental health is the thing no one wants. Oh, this isn't this, but in reality, all of our mental health come into play at some point, whether you're stressed, overworked, anxiety, depression, all of these things are mental illness. And understanding that my mind matters and how to not only have value for my own personal mind, but how to have value for my loved one that I was caring for.
Thank you. In that, because when I hear that, that's a few sentences that you put together to just basically say there was a conflict between what you were believing, what you were seeing, and what you were being told by others. How did you arrive at where you are today in your understanding of, I am a Christian, I do believe in the word of God, but I also am a doctor, I am other things? How did you work that out, or how did the Lord work that out? Because I believe personally, so many people are involved in professions, whether it's mental health, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's non-for-profits, where they're hearing one thing and interpreting it one way spiritually,
Mhm.
but then they're also hearing it from other voices And rather than reaching a conclusion, a prayerful conclusion, they just live conflicted. And you don't strike me as a conflicted individual. So how did you reconcile what you had experienced at a young age, what you had heard, and where you're at now?
Mr. Sean, I wear my mask well. Titles and who we are in society, it affords us the opportunity to wear these masks that make people believe we have it all together. And the reality hit when crisis hits your home, who you are does not matter. And there was a moment in 2009 where my mother attacked me, and Williamson County sheriff was called out to the house, and they arrested her because I was bleeding. And
Wow.
in that, I was trying to explain to the sheriff, no, she's just having a mental health crisis, because I had been in this cycle 7 years prior, me and my brother. And so I just continued the cycle. No, this is what's happening. I'm explaining to them. And the sheriff looked at me and he said, Miss Moten, you need to leave your mom in jail so she can finally be diagnosed, because you've gone from Travis County mobile crisis to now Williamson County crisis. And this is the only way, because she's choosing not to get the help, for her to be diagnosed. And Mr. Sean, that was one of the hardest decisions me and my brother ever had to make, was leave her in jail so that she could get the help that she needed. And in desperation, someone referred me to NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And I called NAMI in desperation, like, hey, my mom's in jail. She attacked me. She didn't mean to. Williamson County pressed charges. She's in jail. And I don't know how to navigate this, this court system. And they referred me to an attorney that would work. He worked pro bono, and he helped us navigate getting mom moved from Williamson County Jail to the Austin State Hospital, which is now ASH. And then from the state hospital to the San Gabriel Crisis Center in Williamson County, where she got the help. She went different types of cognitive therapy. She got a caseworker from Bluebonnet Trails. And she was finally on a regimen that didn't make her seem like she was a zombie. And it was in that moment, I was so thankful to God that we had a little bit of knowing. My mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And they asked me, had she ever showed these signs early on? But I told them, we're her children, so we were living in her reality. And then we thought maybe after Hurricane Allison came, she lost everything she owned, and post-traumatic stress left untreated can evolve to different things, because we never saw this side of her. This was no longer our mother. And we had to figure out, how do we learn who she is? How do we understand through her lens how life looks? So I started the class Family to Family with NAMI, and I became a family to family instructor and I started teaching the class. And it took me months, but I encouraged my brother to take the class because he was my partner in this. And I felt we needed to, after I prayed, and God was like, you have to equip yourself with the knowledge. The knowledge is here. You're praying, but you need to understand, what is it like for your mom? And how do you communicate with her? So this class taught us how to see the signs when she's in crisis, how to understand how to communicate with her through her lens of schizophrenia. And we were able to approach her differently the rest of the way. So even though the mental illness didn't go away, the prayer was answered because we got resources and support to equip ourselves to be able to walk this journey as her partner, not as a dictator. Mom, you need to do this. You need to take these meds. You need to do this, but really become a partner in her mental health journey.
As you were speaking, some of the thoughts that I had were, I believe there are some people listening that are dealing with some mental illness issues in their family, or even in these days and times in the workplace. Meaning, sometimes it's just a private joke, not where I work, but I've heard different friends speak about coworkers. Man, they just crazy. I thought he was gonna walk in with a gun, and there's jokes. And when I was younger, they would call people quirky. And that was just a polite way to say something is off with that individual. And so as I thought about that, how did what you experienced affect relationships that you had and have now?
Wow. It affected all of my relationships. I was actually, when I first got my mom, I was actually, over that period of time, I was married. And because my mom had moved in with us and she was in crisis, one day he woke up and my mother was standing over him with a butcher knife. That day, he packed his things and he left. And to be honest with you, Mr. Sean, if she wasn't my mother, I'd have probably left too. Um, but it changed the way I viewed life. My mother came into my world when I was 23. I just graduated from Prairie View, moved to Austin. I was a media relations officer at TechStyle, and I was beginning life differently. My brother had just moved back from Germany. He was in the military and he was beginning life differently. But then all of a sudden, after the flood and after mom lost everything, it was something different. And so here it is, we're both in our 20s. No one ever taught us how to navigate mental health or mental illness. And having a crisis at 3 and 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning and turning around and going back to work, I wasn't 100%. And there were times where I got docked. In 2008, I was a student at St. Edward's University in their master's organizational leadership and ethics. And I was dismissed from the program with 2 classes left to graduate. And even though I gave them all the police reports, and the dean told me, you should have asked us for help sooner. We would have supported you. And I'm like, but I didn't know what to do with this. So dismissed from the program, I was working at Austin Community College and I was like a zombie. I was kind of burning the candle at both ends, and it was stressful. And in 2008, I came to a breaking point after walking through my divorce, being kicked out of the graduate program. I tried to drive my car off of the highway, Mopac and 183. And in that moment, I tried to drive my car off the highway. One of my girlfriends, she called and she just started praying. She says, what are you doing? I said, I just tried to drive my car. I can't take this anymore. My mom was at the house, but I didn't know how to do life and have relationships and work and keep taking care of her. I didn't have a balance. I didn't know how to get a balance. But when I took that class from NAMI, I finally felt like I was back in the driver's seat, and it was like a light had shined on me because it gave me understanding. And, mental illness is not crazy, but what is crazy is that people are reluctant to talk about it. And and you have to be intentional about your own mental health. Even as a caregiver, how do we take the time to not only love the ones we're caring for, but take that time to love yourself? And so I had to get in therapy so that I could gain some support in being able to help not only navigate my mother's mental health journey, but now this depression that I had fell in. How was I going to dig myself back out? And how was I going to start all over again?
So anyone who's watching this, that something you have said or an experience that you shared is resonating with them, because I believe that's going to happen. What would be two absolutes, if there are any, that you would say if you are dealing, whether it's with yourself or with someone else, mental illness? My experience tells me that these two things need to take place for you to get better. Meaning they're not the only two things, but there's such a wide gambit of suggestions or actual medical things that have proven to work. But in your years of experience, that's something that can't be bought. You know, I go to doctors all the time, and there's a story, if I might just share it. I was speaking with a friend about value, and he gave this illustration. He says, listen, man, I went to the doctor, and within literally, when I got into the presence of the doctor, it literally was 5 minutes. And the diagnosis that he gave me not only was correct, I'm now well. And so I was super skeptical, because I was like, how could he do that in 5 minutes? And then when I got the bill, I was like, oh my goodness, what? It was only 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then he began to reflect on the fact that he really wasn't paying the doctor just for the diagnosis. He really wasn't paying the doctor for the 5 minutes. He was paying the doctor for the years that, I can't remember if it was a he or a she, spent learning what they needed to learn to be able to diagnose his difficulty, problem, issue in 5 minutes. And so that's why I'm asking you, out of your experience, I'm not saying it can be streamlined, but I'm saying there are some things that I believe you say this absolutely needs to take place. What would you say? If anything, you may disagree.
No, I think number one is think of it as whenever something is wrong with your vehicle, you don't go out into your garage or in your driveway and fix it. You, with boldness, take the car to where it needs to be serviced.
Mm.
And so the one of the things that I would tell them is, what is your need and what needs to be serviced? And take yourself to that space and that place to get that service. You don't have to have all the answers. And as a matter of fact, it's impossible for you to know how to navigate this alone. There is help and there is hope. So whether it's therapy or getting into a support group with other people who are walking the same journey, a lot of times we try to keep our things behind the mask hidden because we don't want anyone to know we're struggling. But sometimes there's a blessing in the struggle. And the blessing in the struggle allows you to connect and get and gain support to help you finish the journey. If you were supposed to be here by yourself, you would be here all by yourself. But the reality is, God has laid out a feast of support and resources to help you navigate the journey. It all starts with you tapping in and saying, hey, I'm taking off my cape today. I don't have a superpower to navigate this. Can you help me?
I believe you. I believe you. And the reason I'm sitting here, I said, boy, she's soft spoken and concise. And as she's speaking, is like I can go 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, she's not. Her tone doesn't change. And I said that's a welcoming. That's a welcome. I don't try to be who I'm not. I appreciate who I am, but I'm listening. I'm like, yes, yeah. Okay, so these days we know you've taken a step of faith and you're now in Houston. And if you had to share, if you're willing, what are 3 goals you have with this move to Houston and what God has spoken to your heart? If you had 3 goals that you want to accomplish in 2022, what would they be? Or what are they?
The goals are, number one, I want to encourage employers to build better support and resources for their employees' mental health.
Right.
I want to encourage the community, especially here in Houston. This is my first time living in Houston in my adult life. I was born and raised here, but I believe God brought me back here because this is also where my mother is buried.
Okay,
And
wait 1 minute.
so since this is the place that she is buried, it's almost symbolic that God wants to give a new birth in how I help and support the community in which I was born and help them understand how to navigate mental health, how to support their mental health journeys. And I just want to be the link that connects the community and society to um, to not only hope, but letting them know that they don't have to navigate this mental health journey by themselves.
Okay, thank you. In closing, do you have any questions for me or comments you would like to share with anyone who might listen or view this interview?
Yes, first, again, thank you so much for doing this. I think it is so important to be able to talk about this subject in particular, because this is the subject that we keep close. This is the subject that we hide behind.
Mhm.
And I just want to encourage everyone who's listening to be free to remove the mask, because the second you remove the mask is the second that you can begin to heal.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and hopefully as things come up and your goals are achieved, we'll have you back and see what's going on, okay?
Thank you so much.
You have a wonderful day.
You too.
In this interview, Dr. Quevarra made a statement where she said mental illness is not being crazy, but it's crazy not to talk about or deal with mental illness. And my takeaway from this whole exchange was the fact, who teaches families how to deal with mental health, wellness, or mental health before an individual has been diagnosed? Meaning, for me to see a friend or a family member exhibit characteristics or traits that cause me to question their mental wellness or mental health, some things had to happen consistently, repeatedly. And so that's just what I'm wondering, because I'm not a clinical professional concerning mental health. And last time I checked, there's not a lot of people who are. And so a lot of behaviors by individuals that are eventually classified as them having mental health problems, what are they classified as before that? we alluded to the fact some people said quirky, some people say, oh, they crazy. Some people are actually going to work in fear of their coworkers or the hierarchy who have demonstrated some very particular traits when they're upset or things are not going their way. So this is just a thought. And I believe that we need to have more conversations with professionals in the mental health arena so that we can know what to look for and at the same time know how to interact with people who might possibly have mental health problems. There are a lot of situations in families, in marriages, at work, and in churches where I firmly believe one of the foundational problems is that people just don't understand how to interact with other people outside of what they like to do. A lot of people have read a book by Gary Chapman called 5 Love Languages. And the basic premise is that I can love you the way I like. And if I like to be loved with physical touch, but let's say your love language is you want gifts. When you're giving me gifts but no physical touch, do I feel loved? When I'm giving you physical touch, but I'm giving you no gifts, do you feel loved? When people are struggling with their mental wellness or mental health, but it hasn't been diagnosed, how are they interacting with us? And so I know I've asked a lot of questions and maybe some questions have arisen in your mind, but this interview was not the end result. The end result, I hope, is that you begin to have a conversation with people who are professionals or who have experience in this area so that we can better relate to some of those individuals in our lives or even relate to ourselves with an understanding, not from our own perspective, but from the perspective of having gathered some more facts and information that could help some people and might even help us as an individual or help us in relation to others. You guys have a great day.